There are national security concerns. If there was conflict in the Pacific, the U.S. would have to move naval assets, submarines through the canal to get there. I think Trump's team, hawkish as they are on China, is concerned about that side of things as well. Might want to see Panama do something like, kick out the two Hong Kong companies that are currently in the area. That could come with a big price tag for Panama, but I don't think Trump would be above trying to, strong arm Panama into doing something like that.
What's going on here, Will? You'll have to explain this to us. Why does America want Panama? And then we'll talk about why Trump is talking the way he's talking about it. But what's the interest here for America?
Well, look, I think there's an interest personally for Donald Trump, and it goes back a while. The Panama Canal is something he's been talking about for a few years now, actually, but most recently just a couple times in quick succession. And I think there's two reasons he cares about it. I mean, one are the fees on cargo moving through the canal. 12% of U.S. trade goes through the Panama Canal. That's $5 trillion a year. Half of our exports to Asia go through the canal, and specifically a lot, over half of our liquid natural gas exported to Asia goes through the canal. So why does that matter? I mean, these are industries that are close to Trump. He cares about energy. He wants the U.S. to be energy dominant. And I think he wants to see those fees come down. The problem is that, for Panama, these fees are how they keep the canal running, how they make improvements, how they're addressing this issue of drought and insufficient water in the canal. So they're going to be resistant, I think, to try to create some kind of carve out for U.S. companies here, if that's ultimately what Trump pushes for.
And Panama is a sovereign country. It's a place that can make its own decisions. There's no, because the startling thing he said, and look, he says things all the time, and he wants to make Canada the 51st state. He said he wouldn't rule out military intervention in terms of taking Greenland and in taking Panama. That would involve invading a sovereign country in order to get for economic gain. That's presumably not being, is that being taken seriously as a threat, do you think?
I don't think we're going to see anything like that. But, there are other ways that the U.S. could pressure Panama to either lower these fees, kind of figure out some way to do it semi-selectively for U.S. companies, or to kick out Chinese companies from the area, which is another issue. I mean, so the other reason that Trump seems to care about this is the presence of China and Chinese firms. His own members of his own incoming team have gone out publicly and said, this is what this is all about. Right. And, I want to make clear this is a bipartisan concern. There are Democrats who worry about this, too. And you have a Hong Kong based company subject to Chinese laws that is operating two ports on either side of the canal. I mean, the General Laura Richardson, former commander of Southcom, has said this is a major issue. It's not what Trump is saying. It's not that Chinese soldiers are in the canal or running the canal, but there are national security concerns. If there was conflict in the Pacific, the U.S. would have to move naval assets, submarines through the canal to get there. I think Trump's team, hawkish as they are on China, is concerned about that side of things as well. Might want to see Panama do something like, kick out the two Hong Kong companies that are currently in the area. That could come with a big price tag for Panama, but I don't think Trump would be above trying to, strong arm Panama into doing something like that.
And I guess the question for Panama is where they've got to pay to keep the canal functioning, as you say. So whose money's better? And if America can give them a deal, which means they don't need China, maybe they'll do that deal. But that's not the tone of Trump. I mean, Trump likes to talk. I mean, we talked about Canada actually yesterday, and the argument was put to us that what he does is he says something outrageous at 100%, and then he comes in reality at 50%. Is that what he's doing in Panama, probably, do you feel?
I mean, I think it's a little too early to say. And, he is harping on it. This is something he's brought up multiple times now. So I think with with a lot of things, we're just going to have to wait and see until after Inauguration Day what he really means by it.
Do you think it shows that he's willing? Because China has this sort of economic imperialist model where it goes into countries and it provides infrastructure, and therefore it has influence. It happens in South America, it happens in Africa, it happens in the Pacific. Is that going to be a sort of battleground for Trump? Do you think that he's not going to just say that Chinese approach to gaining influence in countries that America cares about, that's strategically important to America? He's gonna fight back there.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at Latin America, this rivalry with China is going to be the main framework, or one of the main frameworks he uses to look at the region. But I think you're going to see a really different story play out in Mexico, Central America, and South America. So the difference there is that in South America, with the exception of Colombia, all these countries do far more trade now with China than with the U.S. A couple other small exceptions, but that's the general tendency. Now, Central America, Mexico, that part of Latin America is still really tied to the U.S. in terms of commerce. So, I think Trump can use that leverage to pressure countries, as ugly as it might be. I mean, he can kind of bully them, pressure them, North Panama and on north. But if you're talking about trying to pressure Argentina, Brazil, Peru out of having a deep trade relationship and getting infrastructure built by China, I don't think you're going to see that happen. It's just that ship has sailed.
And what about Mexico? Because he talks about renaming the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of US. There is a problem of drugs coming into the country. There is a problem of migrants coming into the country. Is that a soluble problem, actually, the Mexican border? And how much is that going to be a preoccupation of him, do you think?
Well, I mean, just in the past year, and this is, of course, with Biden in office, border apprehensions by border guards, at the U.S. southern border have gone down by 80%. So that's mostly because of Mexican enforcement. That's because of an unprecedented Mexican crackdown on their own southern border and on migrants traveling north throughout the country. So I think that shows that, yes, Mexico does have the capacity when push comes to shove to limit, flows of people and probably also flows of drugs, although we haven't seen such a drop off there. But the question is if they can squeeze any more, results out of the capacity they do have. 80% is pretty huge, and I think Trump is going to want to see it drop to essentially zero. Can Mexico do that? I'm really not sure. I mean, keep in mind this is a country with raging narco violence, where they also need their military-run police, essentially the National Guard, to be present fighting cartels, doing a bunch of other stuff. They can't be spending all their time on stopping migrants and U.S.-bound fentanyl. So I think it's a big ask to make of Mexico, but certainly Trump's going to be demanding results there from day one.
He is. Well, we've got 12 days to see what he starts doing after inauguration. It's going to be pretty much all over the world. Fascinating consequences of him taking power. Well, great to speak to you. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, great to talk to you too.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be with you. Well, we need Greenland for national security purposes. I've been told that for a long time, long before I even ran. I mean, people have been talking about it for a long time. You have approximately 45,000 people there. People really don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to it. But if they do, they should give it up because we need it for national security. That's for the free world. I'm talking about protecting the free world. You don't even need binoculars. You look outside, you have China ships all over the place. You have Russian ships all over the place. We're not letting that happen. We're not letting it happen. And if Denmark wants to get to a conclusion, but nobody knows if they even have any right, title, or interest. The people are going to probably vote for independence or to come into the United States. But if they did do that, then I would tariff Denmark at a very high level.
Have you asked your staff to draw up plans for the leader of the Conservative Party in Canada said under no circumstances will it ever be the 51st
Then
state.
maybe he won't win, but maybe he will. You're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two. But I can say this, we need them for economic security. The Panama Canal was built for our military. I'm not going to commit to that now. It might be that you'll have to do something. Look, the Panama Canal is vital to our country. It's being operated by China. China. And we gave the Panama Canal to Panama. We didn't give it to China. And they've abused it. They've abused that gift. It should have never been made, by the way. Giving the Panama Canal is why Jimmy Carter lost the election, in my opinion, more so maybe than the hostages. The hostages were a big deal. But if you remember, and nobody wants to talk about the Panama Canal now because, it's inappropriate, I guess, but because it's a bad part of the Carter legacy. But he was a good man. Look, he was a good man. I knew him a little bit, and he was a very fine person, but that was a big mistake. Giving the Panama Canal to Panama was a very big mistake. I was going to use that as a major talking point, but I never got to use it because all of a sudden I had expected again all over the world. The Panama Canal is a disgrace, what took place at the Panama Canal. Jimmy Carter gave it to them for $1, and they were supposed to treat us well. I thought it was a terrible thing to do. Was the fact that they are allowing prisoners to come into our country. We gave it away for $1. But the deal was that, you know, they have to treat us fairly. They don't treat us fairly. They charge more for our ships than they charge for ships of other countries. They charge more for our Navy than they charge for navies of other countries. They laugh at us because they think we're stupid, but we're not stupid anymore. So the Panama Canal is under discussion with them right now. They violated every aspect of the agreement, and they've morally violated it also. What immediately is, just leave it in place. No. To be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, which has a beautiful ring that covers a lot of territory. The Gulf of America, what a beautiful name. It was a very good news conference. I think they've come a long way. Meta. Economic force. Because Canada and the United States, that would really be something. You get rid of that artificially drawn line, and you take a look at what that looks like, and it would also be much better for national security. Don't forget, we basically protect Canada.
By executive order, are you planning to do on executive order when it comes to immigration? And how much do you want Congress?
We don't need anything they have. We don't need their dairy products. We have more than they have. We don't need anything. So why are we losing $200 billion a year and more to protect Canada? And I said that to, as I called him, Governor Trudeau. I said, listen, what would happen if we didn't subsidize you, if we didn't, because we give them a lot of money. So we'll do this again. I just want to thank everybody very much. No, right. But why are we supporting a country, $200 billion plus a year? Our military is at their disposal. All of these other things, they should be a state. That's why I told Trudeau when he came down, I said, what would happen if we didn't do it?